in these posts that have been accessed by India Today's OSINT desk, there are dozens of Chinese nationals, and they're asking some very, very searching questions. Ordinarily in India, we'd imagine that this is not possible, that Chinese nationals just blindly accept whatever their government says, but these posts seem to suggest that some very uncomfortable questions are being asked of the PLA. If the Indian army can organize a public remembrance, people are asking the Chinese administration, why can't we?
Well, I mean, the PLA is controlled by the government, and the government doesn't want to inflame tensions right now that are always very high. I mean, there's a strong nationalistic fever here on both sides. You have two very, very proud ancient civilizations, and this is a tragedy. But comparing numbers will not bring back anybody. It will not make this a glorious fight. This is just, very, very unfortunate. But, the Weibo posts, show that in China you can express your opinion. These people aren't disappearing. There's no such thing going on. It would be a problem, however, if they said, look, I want to get together everybody and go march on Beijing or something like that. Then the Chinese government would take notice.
Anand Krishnan, you've been looking very carefully at the coverage on Chinese state-run media, whether it's the People's Daily, whether it is the Global Times, and on Chinese social media. What are you picking up for viewers who would like to benefit from your expertise in understanding the Chinese mind and what's playing? How are people in China viewing the current tension between India and China?
Rahul, it's happening in two levels. The most important official media, like the People's Daily, the have not been reporting at all about the clash on June 16th. This happened the previous day. On the other hand, there's a lot of discussion on social media. Social media is really playing it. With social media, the China-India border, as of just now, 2.4 billion views, which is one of the trending hashtags on Chinese social media. So there is a lot of attention. So that as yet. But there is a difference from Doklam, where the Chinese official media was very much in on the act. We haven't seen that yet.
Why do you think that's the case? Because this is something we're picking up again and again, that during the Doklam crisis, there was a lot of chest beating, a lot of attempt to whip up Chinese nationalism. Here, where the confrontation is arguably much more intense across a far wider space, the Chinese official media seems to be completely quiet on this. Why is that, you think, Anand?
I think that's because it's a far more sensitive and complicated affair than Doklam was. And they looked at Doklam very differently because it was not an India-China affair alone. It was happening on Bhutanese territory, not on Indian territory, or territory that India claimed. So the Chinese felt that at some point India was going to have to withdraw and claim a win. So I think they felt that they were on a very safe fit in Doklam, and ultimately they could portray this as a win at home, which is what they did finally. But I think, Rahul, what you brought out is it's very tricky for the government because they have never, the Chinese government has never publicly acknowledged casualties in the aftermath of an incident. The 62 war came out only in 1994 and not in a big way. History that came out in 1994. And I think what happened in Galwan is a huge event for the PLA because the first combat casualties since 1989 with Vietnam. So it is an event for the PLA, and that's why people are asking. The PLA loses combat casualties every other year. That's why
China makes it seem as if it's because it wants to dial down on tension, which is why it's not revealing the actual casualty numbers. The reality is, if the numbers were to come out, maybe the Chinese people would be so embarrassed by their army and would start asking more questions to the government and the army about the kind of mess they landed themselves in. Is that why, Einar Tangen, that these numbers aren't being put out?
That's purely speculation. I don't know any more than you do how many people perished, if any, from the Chinese side. But I know that if you started publishing numbers, no matter if it was 10 or 1,000, this would whip up a tremendous amount of anger on the Chinese side. And as both governments are there not to react in haste and emotion, but cooler heads, And this is the issue. You don't want wars started by the misplaced aggression of soldiers who don't want to give way. What you want is careful consideration of the policy, understanding where to go forward and how to solve this problem.